This is Caleb Jones, and this is Alpha Male 2.0, freedom-focused lifestyle design for men. If you are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. We do 5 videos a week here on how to make both your business life and your woman life more free, because you need both. Alex Becker recently did a video on why he doesn't hire Americans. I will link to it below, and I will go through some of the comments he made with some of my comments. You need to understand why America is collapsing. And in this video, he talks about, and I agree with most of his points, one of the many reasons why America is on its way down.
So look, as you've seen with Corona, working remotely is not just good, it's optimal. There's no benefit for me having my employees drive through traffic an hour to 2 hours per day.
That is correct. Location independence is not only an option, it is now optimal. There is no reason to be at a building and put a bunch of people in a building and have them do a bunch of work for you unless you are starting some kind of manufacturing concern or something like that. There's literally no reason to do it. Alpha 2.0 business structures are optimal. You've got to get over this thing. And most of you, I think, are over this by now. But some of you are still clinging to this old-fashioned concept of, I need people in an office so I can watch what they're doing, so I got to make sure they're doing what I say. There's no reason to do that.
So let me just explain why we rarely hire Americans. First off, it's not because I'm against hiring Americans. I'd love to hire more Americans. The problem is that when I put out a job application, there are hundreds of countries out there, meaning we get people from all over the place. Americans usually only make up about, 10% of our applications. So there's that right off the bat right there. Another thing you might be thinking is, okay, well, you're just looking for cheaper employees. That's not the case. Really smart people can demand high wages, and we hire really smart people. So it's not a wage thing. However, that is definitely a thing for other companies. But let's imagine we got 5 applicants. One's from America. We got 4 other from other countries. Now, I'm not saying I even factor in countries at all. I just want to let you know why I consistently see Americans not do as well in their applications or resumes as people in other countries. And more often than not, it comes down to a bad cultural fit that we're not trying to force. At Hyros, we have 5 values at our company. One of these biggest ones being self-startedness, not needing to be managed at all, and then really taking care of the person next to you at the company. Those are the cores of our company. We have other ones that are more based around customers and sales and the actual product itself. A lot of times Americans fail these fits. Here's why. So first things first, we're in tech, so you would expect us to be kind of hiring Silicon Valley type people, and that's where we get a lot of applications from. The reason why we don't hire a lot of Silicon Valley type people is because people from Silicon Valley, specifically Americans, are usually mercenaries. They're usually only looking to work at a company for 2 to 3 years. At Hyros, most employees at the company have been with us for at least 3 years. Many as long as 4 to 5. We've been working on multiple companies together for a long time. We don't really have high turnover. I can't remember the last time we had someone leave the company.
There are guys who I can hire for certain technical tasks who are Americans who will charge $50 an hour. And there are guys I can hire for the exact same tasks that have the exact same skill sets, the exact same level of experience, the exact same exposure to the same technologies, the exact same skills, who can charge $18 an hour, $15 an hour, $10 an hour, $25 an hour. The only benefit you're getting, which really isn't a benefit, is that the guy who charges $40 or $50 an hour is an American who lives in America. I don't care where you live. If you're doing work for me, I don't give a shit where you live. I don't care if you have a foreign accent. I don't care. I want you to get the work done that I need done. So when you have your own business, you shouldn't care either. You shouldn't care where that person is located or how that person speaks, as long as they speak English. Obviously, they have to speak your language. But even then, I can think of examples where they don't even need to do that.
And I can't tell you what an incredible asset that is, because you can get someone early on who might not be as qualified and train them up in 2 to 3 months to be insanely qualified. And over 2 years, they're going to become the best #1 possible person for the job you could ever imagine. And so when we go and are hiring Americans, a lot of times they have this mercenary mindset where they're going to come on for 1 to 2 years. They don't care what company they're at. They're just trying to get something good on their resume, learn a little bit, and then bounce. That's not what we're looking for. And if you look at companies like ClickFunnels, for example, in the United States, or Shopify, while ClickFunnels is in the United States, they're based in areas that are not where you would technically be hiring tech people. And because of that, they have super low turnover because they're hiring from places outside of this mercenary mindset.
Now, I have experienced something similar to this, not to the degree he's talking about. I also experienced turnover with people who are not Americans. But I have found, generally speaking, that working with all over the world, working with all nationalities, Non-Americans tend to value their jobs and their positions and their work more than Americans do. Like Alex said, Americans are mercenaries. Nothing wrong with that, but the challenge with that is if you're an American, you're likely going to value what you're doing less than if you are from some other country. If you're from some other country, particularly if it's outside of the Western world. So when I say non-American, I'm not really talking about Canadians or Europeans, because they're almost like Americans. I'm talking about outside of the West. You're going to cherish that work a little more than an American will. I've seen that both reflected in the work and in the turnover rate. So he's not wrong about that.
Secondly, I'm sure you watch the news. Politics and outside cultural influence are huge. Look, I don't care where a person falls in politically. I do care if the person's constantly distracted and bringing in political issues into the workplace. I don't care if they're on the right. I don't care if they're on the left. We are here to build a great product for our customers and have a lot of fun doing it and take care of each other, and that's it. A lot of times, what we see with a lot of Americans coming in is they are so completely rigged by social media. They're so completely rigged by the news that, first off, there's a high risk of them causing drama at the company. Just bringing in stuff, or if something is said in the company they don't politically agree with, causing a fuss, because that's just what you do now. On the right and the left, if something is disagreeable, a very large amount of people will cause all sorts of controversy in the workplace. We don't have time for that at all.
Boom, there it is. That's the problem. Americans have become obsessed with politics. And he was very good to say both the left and the right, because that's what I've been saying for over 10 years. Both the left and the right in the United States are both the problem. They have become psychotic about politics. Back in the olden days, maybe 15 plus years ago, certainly 20 plus years ago, politics was its own thing. It was separate from everything else. You had sports, you had politics, you had family, you had dating, you had movies, you had all these different pieces, and it worked. Today, politics in the United States has affected all these things. It's infested sports. It's infested movies, as I've shown many times on my blogs. It's infested social media, of course. It's infested things you wouldn't even imagine, like dating advice. Politics is now everywhere, and everyone, both the left and the right, are hypersensitive to anything they don't like. Trump supporters lose their fucking minds. SJWs lose their fucking minds if anything happens politically that they disagree with. Americans are uptight. They've got 2x4s up their asses about all kinds of political issues, and you just don't see this with most other countries. There are unusual exceptions, but I have been all over the world. I have worked with people all over the world. People don't give a shit about politics to the degree Americans do. They just don't care. Like Alex said, when we hire people, we want them to work. We don't want you to start a bunch of drama and bullshit about your political views in the workplace. And you are much more protected from that if you avoid Americans. Now, I employ Americans. A lot of people on my staff are Americans, and they're great. But again, I don't care if you're an American or not. I just want the work done, to his point.
Okay, and we also don't have time to mind our P's and Q's at the company. Now, I'm not saying this is all Americans. I'm just saying it's pretty consistently. Next, we don't want people who are constantly distracted. When people are going and they're constantly on social media and dealing with all the toxicity that's going on in the news and the media and on social media, and again, I'm not leaning left or right, but people are upset all the time. This really lowers their output.
I hope you listen very carefully to what he just said, because he's right. Americans are upset all the time, and it's affecting their output. We talk a lot about statistical and economic numbers about loss of productivity, loss from COVID, tax rates, unemployment, all that stuff. We've talked about that for years. No one talks about the lost productivity at work from the United States because everyone is so angry all the fucking time. Everyone is so pissed all the time. They're so touchy all the time. They're so pissed off. They're so depressed. They're so scared. They're so ready to be offended in the case of the left. They're so overbearing in the case of the right. I should say the Trump left, because there's no such thing as right anymore in the United States. Yes, that's the problem with Americans. They're too angry about everything. And they've got to calm the fuck down. And I'll be honest with you, one of the joys I have of traveling internationally and spending time outside of the United States is that people aren't as worked up as Americans. When you go to South America, when you go to even Asia, when you go to certainly some places in Europe, when you go to other parts of the world, people are relaxed. They're chill, they're smiling, they're having a good time, they're happy, or at least less angry, at least than Americans. And then you come back to America and everyone's all pissed off again. It happens. And if you've never really spent a lot of time outside the United States, and most of you haven't, you can't relate to this. You think it's normal. You think wherever you see around you is what the whole world is. It's not. And you guys who've traveled abroad, outside of America a lot, you know exactly what I'm talking about. People are more chill. They're happier. They're nicer outside the United States, generally speaking. Especially today. It wasn't like that always. It wasn't like this 30 years ago. This is a new thing. America's collapsing. People are getting more angry, more irrational, more pissed off. This is part of the collapse we're experiencing. So this is something new.
I'm not saying politics don't exist in other countries. However, when we hire out of other countries, there's far less drama, there's far less controversy going on. So the person is just focused on Hyros and building up Hyros. Again, I'm not saying it's politics free, always and always. I'm not saying we're in our chats saying all sorts of crazy stuff 24/7. I'm just saying a lot of times when we go check out, for example, an American's Facebook or their Twitter, tons of politics and drama. We don't have time for that. We don't have time for that at the company. I don't care right or left. We just don't. If you go look at any of our employees' news feeds, there's very, very little. Okay, there's very, very little, and it's never dragged into work.
Yes, I suggest you do that experiment. Go look at a random sampling of 5 to 10 Americans' Facebook pages or Twitter pages or Instagram pages or what have you, and then go look at a random sampling of people who are outside the Western world and compare the level of anger and problems. I follow on my personal social media a lot of people who are outside the United States, who don't live in the United States, who've never been to the United States. And I can tell you for a fact, the amount of politics is maybe 10 to 1. They don't give a fuck. Every once in a while, they may go to a protest or mention something, but the other 90% of the time, it's just them living life and having fun.
Again, this is not unanimous. I'm just saying what I usually see pop up. A lot of times, Americans are not appreciative for jobs. They feel that the job is entitled or that the job is below them or it's a temporary job. Sort of like the mercenary style that I talked about before.
Yeah, that would be the millennials and the left-wingers. Correct. I've already discussed that in prior videos. Americans think they're entitled to what they get. The concept that they have to work for something, that you have to actually work and then get the benefit, is actually offensive to today's modern generation of Americans. It's the opposite of Americans of yesteryear. And again, you don't see this stuff in other countries, especially countries like Asia, where they outwork us 1,000,000 to 1.
Usually what we see when we hire from outside of the US is when we bring people on, especially when we find them early, what I like to do is I like to hire people that are not so much qualified, but they're a great cultural fit and really smart. A lot of times people are signing up and they say, I don't care what it takes. I don't care the hours I have to work. I'm going to come and kick butt and I want to rise up at this company. A lot of times when we hire Americans, they're like, hey, I just got out of school. I just want a job. Don't make me work more than 7 hours a day and don't ask me to do stuff outside of my job skill set. I routinely see that. For example, I'll constantly hire people from other countries. They want to get going right away, or we'll hire American and they start, for example, start negotiating their lunch break time. For just for reference, we don't even have hours at Hyros. As long as people get results, we don't care how many hours they work. So it was just, that was literally brought up in the interview process. So when we were starting to hire the person, that just kind of shows you the type of mindset difference. Again, it's not unanimous, but it's pretty consistent.
Is what he just said indicative of a culture on the rise? Indicative of a culture that is doing well? Indicative of a culture that is growing economically? Or is it indicative of a culture that is dying? A culture that is collapsing? A culture whose greatest days were many, many, many years ago? You be the judge.
And a lot of the expectations just get out of hand. And while the work really doesn't improve with these expectations. Again, I'm not saying that's always. And I'm not saying we're not going to go above and beyond for our employees. That's the number one goal at our company, is to make sure our employees and their families are taken care of. We want people that really want to be there, though. And it's really, really hard to find people in America that really want to be there. It's very rare. The final thing is that with all the regulations, things going up and down in America, again, this doesn't even affect our hiring, but for a lot of companies it does. It's complicated. There are so many laws, there's so many things going up and down. With healthcare and Obamacare that released a few years ago, it just got incredibly complicated. When we're hiring people from other countries, it can be extremely simple. Just super straightforward. Let's go, done, plugged in this week, easy to go.
What have I been saying for 10 years, 20 years, 25 years? America has too many regulations that stifles business. And I know that's offensive to left-wingers, but that's the reality. You just heard it from him. America has to. Now, this is not, as far as I know, Alex Becker is not a right-winger. If anything, he's probably leans left. But you just heard what he said. Americans, it's difficult to hire Americans because of all the goddamn regulations, all the paperwork. And he didn't mention this, or maybe he will, the taxes. I've talked about that. Whereas if you hire people from outside the country, you don't have those problems. As a matter of fact, last year, my attorneys told me, and they told me point blank, they said, Caleb, from now on when you hire new people, try to hire people outside of the United States. Try to do that. There will be less taxes, there will be less paperwork, and your audit risk will go way down if you have lots of non-Americans versus if you have lots of Americans. So I actually had to instruct my chief of staff, whenever we hire someone new, to lean in the direction of hiring people who are not Americans. Do I like that? No, I like Americans. I'm an American. But it's what Alex just said, and he's right. Over the last 25, 30 years, we have, through voting for Democrats and Republicans, made the government so big and so intrusive, it is now easier for companies, even small businesses, to hire people outside of the United States. Whose fault is that? Now, you can get mad about that, but that's the reality.
And when you look at all those things together, it's not that we aren't trying to hire Americans, not that other companies I don't think are trying to hire Americans. It's just when you have 10% of applicants being Americans and you have other countries applying with all these things, and then a lot of times asking for less pay, it's consistently much harder to get a job.
Hiring Americans means you will spend more money, you will have more paperwork, you will have more legal risk for an employee who doesn't want to be there quite as badly, and an employee who is more entitled, and an employee who will quit sooner. That's the bottom line. And you want to know why America is collapsing? There are many reasons why, but that's one of the big reasons. The entire work ethic of the typical American has radically shifted, particularly in the last 25 to 30 years. And now this is what we've got. And by the way, this is going to get worse. This is not going to get better. This is going to get worse. 15 years from now, it's going to be even more difficult and painful for companies to hire Americans. What do you think that means for the American economy over the next 10, 15, 20, 30 years? I already know the answer to that question. Thankfully, I won't be here. I'm moving out of the United States next year. I can't wait. If you want help on how to not have that kind of attitude, if you want help to design your own Alpha 2.0 business where you don't have to be an employee and you can be location independent and have a location independent business structure where you can hire people anywhere in the world regardless of where they're located, so you're not locked into any one country, even if you are not an American and you live in a country that is kind of a shittier country and you want to hire people outside of your country, if you want to learn how to design a business like that, www.joinsmic.com. I can help you do that. Thousands of guys have done it already. You can do it too. See you in the next video.